Mason on assignment at the scouting combine, and we knew today was going to be a tricky day for Mace to join the show. One, because he's at the scouting combine. Two, because the drill started today. And three, he's watching edge players right now. So, edge players are something that is certainly on the Broncos' radar. Edge is a position that they need to fill in the NFL draft, and we'll see how they do that this year. And I know George Payton has said a lot, and I know George Payton is focused on keeping his job. I think he needs to be focused on hitting more on the day three picks. And I have no idea where this idea comes from, but you see so many people saying, like, I think he's been pretty good on the day three. Like, no, he hasn't. He hasn't. You see people talking about Greg Dulcich, who is one dimensional and injury prone. At this point, Greg Dulcich can improve. Greg Dulcich can be much better. Greg Dulcich needs to be much better. But this is a great tight end class. As I've mentioned multiple times, I have 7 or 8 guys graded equally or higher than Greg Dulcich. And last year, there were guys like Isaiah Likely, Chigi Okonkwo, Jelani Woods, Trey McBride that I liked better than Greg Dulcich. So we can all be excited about Greg Dulcich, but we also need to recognize that he needs to get healthy, stay healthy, become a more well-rounded player. Now, that doesn't mean that he needs to be the world's best blocker. He's never going to be. And he is a receiving weapon. We saw that last year with Greg Dulcich briefly during his rookie season before he was hurt again. So I would rather just tell the truth about George Payton. He's not been real good with his job. And we can say it takes time, and we can say some players develop, and there's plenty of players that you could look at and say, I want to see what Nick Benito. I'm not writing off Nick Benito. Hell, I'm not writing off Greg Dulcich. I'm just saying what they are right now. And then, of course, I look at who he missed on badly on day 3. In fact, I think it was DMAC on Coffee Break that said it yesterday. That's like, I think he's been okay. And then, no, he hasn't. George Payton's been bad. He's been bad. And he's been too safe. He's been somewhat risk averse. And then when he has taken chances, he takes them on a FCS return man that had no buzz. So what? So George Payton is most certainly on the hot seat. And one of the things that George Payton has said at the scouting combine, which I think it's a little harsh to call him a liar. I know the Broncos would be very, very mad at me if I were to say that, or specifically to write that. They're more upset when you write things than you say things, but whatever. I'm revealing too much. But I think when George Payton says there's a sweet spot where they're at in the draft, that's a lie. I think that's a falsehood, okay? I'm not saying he's a liar. I'm just saying, like, the sweet spot, there's one interior offensive line. There's none by the time you're picking. 0. Tackles are dried up by that time. They weren't dried up last year. Again, all of these problems that you have, all of these things that could be solved or they want to be solved this offseason, you could have solved last offseason had you been good at your job. Had you picked the right players. You wouldn't need running back help because you'd have Isaiah Pacheco. You wouldn't need talent in the secondary because you'd have Tariq Woolen. And instead, you're taking a bunch of developmental, long shot prospects. Again, George Payton is either too safe or too wild with his picks. He needs some hits, man. He needs some hits. And I don't think at this point we can say, and Pat Surtain obviously is a hit. He doesn't get credit for Pat Surtain, okay? Can we just please stop with the fantasy that, it was such a great find? Everybody knew Pat Surtain was a stud. Everybody. There were 0, and I rarely say this about a prospect. Calvin Johnson was maybe the last prospect that I would basically say this about, where it's like, he's perfect. He's perfect. I remember being on Fox Sports Net. Remember when that was the thing? And Oren Lamena, I believe, was the host. And he asked me, what's up with, some of the flaws on Calvin Johnson? I'm like, he doesn't catch everything. There are not many flaws on that sort of player. Pat Surtain is that sort of player. He's like the Megatron of cornerbacks. So George Paton doesn't get credit for drafting a can't miss, surefire, Pro Bowl caliber player in the top 10. He needs to be better on day 3 specifically, and he needs to be better than he has been. He hasn't been real good. And when he says sweet spot, I think that is a falsehood. I think that is wrong-headed to think that what they need the most, there's any sort of sweet spot in the 3rd round. It doesn't exist. Not for what they need. They need tackle. They need interior offensive line. They need offensive line help. Please and thank you. The Broncos' largest need, the thing that could bite them in the ass, the thing that could derail the success that I anticipate Sean Payton will have with the Denver Broncos, is a garbage offensive line. And you can't have George Paton out there making bad selections, making bad picks, making bad free agent additions, and then expect to win like you're supposed to win. Everybody has to be great for the Broncos. Sean Payton is great. George Paton is not. And we can spin it the other way if you want and be like, oh, it's upside and he's going to be okay. And like, I go on what he's done. John Elway got ran roughshod over for his picks. Brendan Langley over Trey Hendrickson and Carlos Henderson over Trey Hendrickson. This is dumb. It's just a bad picks, plural. Well, what are we saying about missing on Tariq Woolen? He's okay. No, he's not. Please. And I'm going to tell D, I go in and do Denver sports tonight. I'll be riding solo, and I promise I won't complain much about Tariq Woolen much. And sometimes I feel like I'm the only one. Like, I'm not just going to sit here blindly and be like, George Paton is okay. No, he's not. George Paton needs to be much, much better. And I like George Paton. I think he's a good man. I think he does have an eye for talent. I think he gets a little nervous when it comes time to pick. I think he listens to too many people when it comes time to pick. And he needs to cut that crap out, or else he's going to get fired. And the Broncos will move on. Sean Payton will find the general manager that he can work best with, just like he did Mickey Loomis with the Saints. And not everything was a hit for them. Okay, let's move up and, be real wild with our picks. But when they did hit 2017, speaking of Trey Hendrickson, they got Marshawn Lattimore, they got Ryan Ramczyk, they got Alvin Kamara, they got Trey Hendrickson in 3 rounds. They got 4 Pro Bowl players, all pro players, in 1 draft. George Paton, who now doesn't have a 1st round pick or a 2nd round pick, and, I know people say, well, he didn't have much last year. And listen, Nick Bonito was kind of an anticipated selection by the Broncos. Nick Bonito did not look real good as a rookie. He needs to be much, much better. He needed to show more flashes, and he just didn't. Again, it's too early to write off Nick Bonito, and I'm certainly not writing off Greg Dulcich. There are ways you can cover up Dulcich's flaws on the field, blocking basically. But his body type needs changed in a bad way. Like, he needs to make sure that his hamstrings aren't a problem. He needs to add some more muscle to his frame. Again, when the Broncos were cleaning out their lockers, and I was like, who's this long-haired media member that's like kind of tall? It was Greg Dulcich. There's no way he should look like a member of the media. He should look like a freaking football player. And, that comes from physique. That comes from workouts. And, maybe that's just not his body type, whatever. But I believe that George Paton gets a pass. And I believe it was D-Mac that drew my ire yesterday. And I can't wait to see him today, because I will tell him, like, George Paton hasn't been good, man. You got to stop saying that. And fans out there, it's okay to demand more. I really want to never tell a fan how to fan. Okay. I think that's dumb when people do that. But as I start to do that, listen, it's okay to demand more. The Broncos need to be near the top of the mountain in the NFL. That's where they've been almost my entire life, and I'm old. And they're not there now. They've been there for 7 years, 6 years. If you want to say 2016 was okay, whatever. Like, it's been a while, and everyone needs to be on point. So when they're at the scouting combine, George Paton said a couple of things that are false, in my opinion. First off, if there's a sweet spot in the draft, it's not in the third round. Okay. You get to day 3 and there's going to be some guys available, but where they're picking for what they need, IOL and OT, there's no sweet spot. It's dried up. It's gone. George Paton, it's gone. You're going to have to fix the offensive line as best you can in free agency. You're going to have to spend a bunch of money in free agency. You're going to have to get at least a guard and a tackle. Then you hope Garrett Bowles comes back and he's okay. And, then you have to decide on his future soon after that. So this offensive line, it's one of the keys to success for Sean Payton. It wasn't just Drew Brees being Drew Brees. There were 3 seasons in a row where Drew Brees was 7-9. Now, mainly that was the defense for New Orleans stinking up the joint. But even with Drew Brees and even with Sean Payton, there were 3 seasons in a row where the Saints were 7-9. Then you had the 2017 NFL draft. And then they went 4 seasons to the postseason and probably should have been to the Super Bowl once or twice in that run with those players. George Paton needs to be much better, and the offensive line has to be better. They're going to let Reisner go. Most likely, things can change. I don't ever want to talk in absolutes, but the writing on the wall is Dalton Reisner's gone, so you better get a guard. You need a right tackle. You need a center. Honestly, if they got 3 offensive linemen this year, you went back with Miners and Bowles, I'd be fine with that. Sorry, Lloyd. Sorry, Lloyd Cushenberry, because it hasn't been enough. It hasn't been good enough with Lloyd Cushenberry. And I still don't think he's mean, even though I've had his teammates tell me, like, no, he's got a mean streak. I'm like, well, we don't really see it, and you kind of need it. Matt Paradis was pretty nasty. You know what I mean? Tommy Nalen was nasty. We've seen great center play, and certainly Nalen's on a different level. As much as I appreciate Matt Paradis, like, Tom Nalen was just on a different level. He was a different dude, and fantastic guy. Also nasty, real nasty. You need that. You need that attitude on the offensive line. You don't really have that. Garrett Bowles doesn't have attitude necessarily. He tries to, which is fine. I give him an A for effort, but he doesn't really strike fear in opponents. Reisner had a little bit of an attitude, but it was mainly directed towards Brett Rippon. Lloyd Cushenberry doesn't have an attitude. Miners has some, but he's still learning. The worst thing in the world for this team was to hire Butch Berry as their offensive line coach. Just god-awful. You didn't get any sort of development of Quinn Miners. You didn't see any sort of steps forward. Obviously, Reisner hasn't developed. Cushenberry didn't develop. Miners didn't develop. Right tackle was a disaster, like all because Butch Berry's an awful coach. And maybe not the nicest man, allegedly, or whatever I have to say. So when George Paton is at the combine and he's going on and on about this sweet spot, I'm like, what sweets? It's all sour. For what you need, like, will there be running back talent in the third round? Yes. But damn it, there's plenty of cheap free agents you could get. There's plenty of late round running backs. Tavion Thomas, everybody. It's going to be like a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick. Perfect. 2-down thumper. You got Tavion Thomas as your starter. You got Chase Edmonds. Reworked his deal, $2 million a year. Chase Edmonds as your change of pace back, because Tavion Thomas isn't as good as receiving as he needed to be. I was disappointed in him at the Shrine Bowl because he was catching the ball well in individual drills. And then when they went to team drills, he started dropping. He had 2 drops. And I know it's just 2 drops. And I know it's just practices for an all-star game, so I don't want to read too much into it. But damn it, when you're Tavion Thomas and you have the reputation of not being a great receiver, you better flip and catch everything. And he didn't. And he was pissed about it. I was pissed about it for him because I love his skill as a runner. He's a great runner. But he's a 2-down thumper. So, okay, 7th round. And again, if you'd have taken Isaiah Pacheco, you wouldn't have had this conversation. But they have Javonte Williams. Pacheco was a 7th round pick. Please, for the love of God, we can be fair when we talk about this team, right? We just don't need to blow bubbles at the Broncos, right? Is that still allowed? I understand that some in the media, it's fine, everybody, it's great, it's the greatest ever. I have a lot of optimism with this team, but I cannot stand local media members, Denver media members, who do nothing but blow rays of sunshine at you, the fans, because you Broncos fans are much smarter than the average NFL fan. You as Broncos fans know what winning football is. And I understand that people respond positively to positivity. I do not like being negative. I do not like hosts or media members who are constantly negative, constantly looking for bad things. But you have to tell the truth. So we have an extreme in Denver. We have a few media members that just do the negative Nelly thing, which is stupid. And then we have more than a few media that are just like, it's okay and everything's okay. And the problem with that becomes there's a lot of people that cover this game that don't know football. And I'm going to sound like an ass, whatever. People already say, you're so arrogant about football. No, I just study this game. This is my job. Okay. And I don't know everything about football, and George Payton's forgotten more about football or whatever I have to say. But damn it, there's too many people with microphones that don't know football, that just get talking points from the team. Little birdies are PR guys. So the team will give you talking points, which was really weird last year when there were, I don't want to get in too much trouble. Let's just say there were some kind of promoting some anti-Russell Wilson sentiment. And it was shocking to me because these some are usually people that aren't very anti the quarterback, even when it was Trevor Siemian or whoever. So it's always interesting to note where you're getting your information from. So I think it's okay to be fair and to be critical while also being optimistic. I feel that's how I approach the Denver Broncos. I want the Broncos to be great. I believe with Sean Payton, they will be great, but they need everyone to step it up. Russell Wilson, you got to step it up. Russell Wilson cannot go out there and think that he's going to play from the pocket and think that he's going to play another 10 years and not run the ball and tell the coaching staff what to do. First off, that's not going to happen with Sean Payton, but Russell Wilson, you're on notice. George Payton, you're on notice. Sean Payton's up here, okay? And Russell Wilson's play is down here now. It needs to come up. George Payton is way down here. Where is George Payton? I can't even see it. It's so low. He's got to be much better, and he doesn't have a first or second round pick to do it. So the standard that the Broncos have and should have always had, but the trust was in place to keep the trust in place. And unfortunately, the Bolin family drama and everything got in the way, and not having an owner, an actual owner, caused this downfall. Now the Walton Penner Group is here to correct things and to right the ship. Always got to pronounce that with the P. They're here to make things better. They will, because Sean Payton's going to make things better. But you better step it up, Russell Wilson. George Payton, you better step it up. Because if not, Sean Payton's going to be great. He's going to demand excellence. And if you are not excellent, you will be gone. Period. Point blank. So don't listen to the constant, like, everything's fine, it's the greatest ever. That's awful. That sort of propaganda is not something I feel Broncos fans should accept. From other teams in this market, maybe you do accept that because that's kind of all you get. With the Broncos, it's different. Y'all are a bunch of smart football fans. So smart football fans are going to look and say, wait, George Payton? Wait a second, what? You missed on all these guys, what? Now you still have these problems. Signing Melvin Gordon back, just awful. Why would you ever, I know it was an Elway mistake, essentially, but John Elway, who I always appreciate, I appreciate John a lot as a player. I honestly think he's the greatest quarterback of all time. Tom Brady kind of broke me when he kept winning Super Bowls. It's like, okay, Brady, stop. So, but I think from a physical standpoint, when everyone goes follows all over Pat Mahomes, we've never seen this before. I always say, yeah, you did. It was number 7. It was John Elway. Like, everything Mahomes is doing, John did it. Now, Mahomes did it faster, to be sure, because, Elway had to fight Dan Reeves. But when he got Mike Shanahan, when he got Terrell Davis, it was perfection. It was beautiful. It's beautiful, man. So John Elway, I'll always defend as a player. As a general manager, he got raked over the coals by the fan base, And yet everyone's like, George Paton's fine. George Paton's not fine. George Paton's not being truthful when he says there's a sweet spot in this draft. There's not for what you need. There's running backs always. Are there edge guys in the middle rounds? Yes, there are. Do you want some inside linebackers if they would ever draft that position? Like, yes, there's receivers, there's tight ends. There might be tight ends available in the third that are better than Greg Dulcich. It's a great tight end class. There's 3 tight ends that I think will go in the first round. It's a great tight end class, not just average. It's great. And last year was, somewhat average, but I still liked quite a few of those guys who I mentioned before. So if you're George Paton, there's a sweet spot in the draft that's in the mid rounds. It always is, like who's going to drop and who didn't get picked and what teams have a run, like what guys get overlooked. But it is not for what the Broncos need the most, which is offensive tackle and inside offensive line, center, guard, tackle, all of them. Yes. If they, and I'm being sarcastic, but if they drafted all offensive linemen, okay. I get it, right? They don't have it. They still need edge. You need edge. You need edge help. Baron Browning kind of leveled off. You need edge help. And I like Baron Browning. He was my number 50 player that year. Broncos got him late. And I applauded that pick. Baron Browning's a good pick. He needs to step it up again. Sean Payton's up here. So you can't be down here and expect to stay with the Denver Broncos. Baron Browning can't just be he's okay and he's a rotational guy. Somebody, I believe, was in the chat room the other day was like, he's like Shaq Barrett. No, he's not. He's more like Malik Reed. And Malik Reed is nice, rotational guy. You don't need a nice rotational guy. You need someone to play and to strike fear into opponents' hearts because Randy Gregory's not going to be healthy. When Randy Gregory is healthy for 5 games, I feel like it was like Bryce Callahan. Like Bryce Callahan's going to be great for 10 games. Randy Gregory is going to be awesome for 7 games. Like Randy Gregory's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. I don't care about the weed stuff. Like whatever. He isn't healthy. You need edge. So is there a sweet spot for edge? Sure. Was that maybe what George Paton was talking about? Sure. But the greatest need on this team is in the offensive line room. It's in the trenches. And they've got to get much better there, and there is no sweet spot. The other falsehood that came from George Paton is talking about Javonte Williams. Now, Jeff Legwold's one of the best in the game, okay? And normally, I try to play nice. I don't always play nice. Listen, there's plenty of people in the Denver media I just absolutely can't stand. I won't tell you necessarily because I don't want to be rude, and at the end of the day, my opinion about them doesn't matter. Just do good work. That's all I ask from anybody. Just do good work. That's all I ask for myself. I get mad if I say Devin Lloyd when I meant Devin Bush, right? Do good work. So, but when they're really good, like exceptional, I will tell you they're exceptional. Jeff Legwold is exceptional. Top of the top. And when Legwold says, hey, Javonte might not be ready, that's because it's true. So, and George Paton could have easily had answered these 2 questions, these 2 falsehoods from his combine interview. He could have easily answered them in a way where he wasn't lying and he wasn't telling a non-truth or a falsehood. For the sweet spot in the draft, hey, what do you think about you're not drafting until the 3rd round? Well, we're on the books now to not draft until the 3rd round. But you never know what kind of deals can be made. And I think there's talent all throughout this entire draft. That's correct. That's something you say. Talking about the sweet spot. We're in the sweet spot. Come on, George. This ain't Minnesota, buddy. You don't need to Rick Spielman it up. And I appreciate Rick Spielman. Obviously, he's forgot more about football than me or whatever. But look what happened to Rick Spielman. And look what happened to Minnesota under Rick Spielman's watch. They didn't win anything. So you have a GM that learned under a guy that was super safe, never got quarterback right, and didn't win anything. That's not what the Broncos are about. Now I look at what he said about Javonte Williams. We have full confidence Javonte be ready week 1. How about you don't say that? Because now, and I love Javonte Williams. I love Javonte Williams. As much as I blather on about Isaiah Pacheco, you know who's better? Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams is Nick Chubb, and I feel that Nick Chubb is the greatest running back in football. Better than Derrick Henry, better than Jonathan Taylor. Nick Chubb is the greatest running back in football. And you had Nick Chubb 2.0 in Javonte Williams. You screwed it up. You screwed it up because you spent time, wasted time on Melvin Gordon. Awful, awful player. Just an awful decision. And you have Javonte, should have ran him into the ground. And I know, it's running back. People are trying to save up these running backs like, just save them up. Like, no, you got a talented one. You ride that guy into the ground. And you didn't do that with Javonte for 2 years now. He may never be the same again. And if you're George Payton, instead of saying, like, you could be ready week 1, because now, here's what's going to happen. I've seen this too many times. Here's what's going to happen, everybody. You're going to get to a certain point, like right before training camp. Javonte Williams is going to start training camp on the PUP list. This is a guess. I'm totally guessing. It's March 2nd, but I'm totally guessing, everybody. Javonte starts training camp on the PUP list. George Payton. It's procedural. Hey, and because just ease him back in. He's going to get out there. He's not going to play in any preseason games, and he won't be ready week 1. I don't believe that he will be ready week 1. That's a major, major multiple ligament knee injury that he's trying to come back from, and he's a power guy that wasn't ever known for his speed, ever. I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I believe C.J. Anderson, who had a 75-yard thing against UCLA, I think it was a screen pass. I think C.J. Anderson had longer rushes and plays than Javonte did at North Carolina. I believe. Maybe wrong, maybe misremembering that, but just speed has never been part of Javonte's game, ever. He was just fast enough, certainly power, certainly run after contact. But to say he's going to be ready week 1 when he's probably not going to be just puts Javonte in a bad spot. Now it makes Javonte look bad. Well, what happened? Did he have a setback? No, he didn't have a flipping setback. It's just a major, major knee injury. So now you get people excited. Man, Javonte will be back week 1. You put Javonte in a bad spot, George Payton. So now if Javonte needs to take a little bit more time, and here's the thing, because I love Javonte Williams. I love Javonte Williams, my number 1 running back. He's my number 1 running back. And at his pro day, I did a little 60 seconds for Cecil video. Again, I'm not right on everybody. It always annoys me when people are like, you act like you're right on everybody. No, I don't. I talk more about my misses than I do my hits. But damn it, you know what? It was a hit. Javonte Williams was a hit. And I had him ranked higher than Najee Harris coming out. And I like Najee Harris, but I love Javonte Williams. I love him. And you just made him look bad because now, if he needs a little bit more time to heal, and I am a fan of him taking as much time as he needs. If you can get 90% Javonte Williams, that's damn good. If you rush out 70% Javonte Williams, that's not going to be good. That's not going to be good for that young man. It's not going to be good for the Denver Broncos. You need to make the decisions that are best for the Denver Broncos, and saying that, the week 1, he's going to be ready. Like, that's not good. That's not good at all, George Payton, and you should know better than this. I think George is a little rattled. And hey, you're the guy that hired Nathaniel Hackett. You probably are on edge for keeping your job anyway. But you got to be on point, man. You got to be sharp. You got Sean Payton in the building. You can't be running around making mistakes in the draft, make mistakes at your damn press conference when you actually get to say something. Oh, hey, week 1, everybody. Because now if he needs to take more time, it's going to, what happened to Javonte? Why isn't Javonte ready? What happened? Did he have a setback? What's going on with Javonte? Instead of saying, hey, we're going to take our time, as much time as he needs. We believe in that young man. I think he can be the best running back in the game. This is how George Payton could have answered that question about Javonte Williams. I believe when fully healthy, Javonte is one of the best. He'd be a top 10, top 5, number 1 running back in all of the NFL. And, it's just going to take some time. And whether he's ready week 1 or week 6 or whatever, we are going to make sure we do our best to get Javonte Williams the, precision that he needs in his recovery and his rehab and his focus and his attention and blah, 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 blah. All these things he could have said, and it could have not had put the pressure on Javonte to get back sooner. Mistakes from George Payton. More mistakes from George Payton. I know you love the Denver Broncos. You should love the Denver Broncos. They're a historic franchise. And Mr. Bolin was amazing. He was amazing. I hope that the Walton Penner Group can have a similar amount of success as the Broncos enjoyed for most of my lifetime under Pat Bolin. It's been awesome. These last 6 years have been god-awful. So fix it. Sean Payton goes towards fixing things. But I'm not going to sit here and just say George Payton's fine or he's done a good job or anything like that. He hasn't. He just hasn't. And he needs to be better. Anyway, that's a wrap, everybody. For Orange and Blue today, 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time, Andrew Mason watching edge players. And there are going to be edge players available in the mid-rounds. So George Payton, you can be correct by saying sweet spot if you solve offensive line in free agency as much as you can in free agency. If they got a guard, a center, and a tackle in free agency, I'd be okay with that. Give me Miners, give me Bulls, 3 new guys. Let's go Broncos. Then you can go get that sweet spot at edge. You could take a running back there. You might even go for tight end. They are looking. I was going to talk about Jamie Robinson today. Didn't even get a chance to do that. I just tweeted about him. Florida State, the transfer, was it South Carolina, top of my head, met formally at the scouting combine, Jamie Robinson, safety from FSU with the Denver Broncos. He's incredibly smart, incredibly versatile. He can play corner, even though he's listed at safety. And also, he's one of the hardest worker. I mean, just insane motor. So we'll talk a little bit more about Jamie Robinson a little bit later. But and that's in the secondary. That's at safety. People say, oh, what about Caden Stearns? Like, yes, Caden Stearns fine. Caden Stearns more than fine. Caden Stearns is back to being like freshman at Texas Caden Stearns, and even better. And that's good news for the Broncos. But you can't rest on your laurels. You can't just sit around and be like, they'll develop. Like, no. Add talent, add competitions, and let the best man win. That's the business of football. Anyway, I'm Cecil Lammey. Appreciate you all for watching Orange and Blue today. Andrew Mason may or may not be able to check in tomorrow. Again, scouting combine drills are going on right now, so we'll see about that. I'll be on Denver Sports tonight, solo, because again, I got a lot to say. Until next time, be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned, and as always, stay frosty.